The colonel who fired me was still conscious when I cut open his dress shirt. He looked up from the marble floor of Wetherby Army Medical Center's new donor hall, saw my face above him, and said the name he had used 12 years earlier, when he signed the paper that ended my career. Ellison, only this time it sounded like a question. 300 people had been standing beneath a bronze wall engraved with the names of military physicians, nurses, and medics. A string quartet had just finished the first movement of something expensive. Retired officers held champagne glasses. Hospital executives wore name badges printed in gold. I was there because the mobile veterans clinic where I worked had received a grant for a second ultrasound unit. Colonel James Rusk was there because the hall carried his name. He had reached the lectern at 7:42 in the evening. He thanked donors, praised institutional courage, and said Wetherby had never hidden from difficult decisions. Then he stopped speaking. His right hand closed around the edge of the lectern. His mouth pulled slightly to one side. The champagne glass nearest him tipped when his elbow struck the table. For a second, nobody moved. People expect emergencies to announce themselves with noise. Sometimes they begin with a man forgetting the next word. I was already walking before he fell. His shoulder hit first. Then the side of his head. A hospital vice president shouted for someone to call a code, though we were in a building full of people whose badges could call one faster than their voices. I dropped beside Rusk and placed 2 fingers against his neck. Pulse present, fast, uneven. Colonel, can you hear me? His eyes opened. Do not try to sit up. His left hand moved. His right did not. I asked him to smile. One side of his face lagged. I asked him to squeeze my fingers. The right side remained weak. Stroke was the obvious answer. The obvious answer can be dangerous when it becomes the only one. His breathing changed while I watched, not slower. Shallower. There was a faint grayness around his mouth, and sweat had appeared along his hairline even though the hall was cold. Any chest pain? He swack, upper or lower? Between. That word changed the room. A stroke with sudden tearing pain between the shoulder blades could mean the artery leaving his heart was splitting. If we treated only the clot, we could make the bleeding worse. I pulled the small trauma scissors from the pocket of my evening coat. I carried them because mobile clinic work has taught me that formal events are usually held farthest from useful equipment. The chief development officer stared at me. What are you doing? Getting access. I cut through Rusk's shirt and undershirt. A woman near the front whispered, "She cannot do that." I did not look up. A retired colonel can have his dignity returned after he has a pulse. His blood pressure on the event medic's cuff was different in each arm. The right was lower. His right wrist pulse was weaker. Possible aortic dissection, I said. Tell the emergency team. No anticoagulants until imaging rules it out. The event medic repeated it into the radio. Rusk's eyes found mine again. He was fighting to keep them open. Ellison, you work here? Not anymore. Something moved across his face, pain first, then recognition. The hospital response team arrived with a stretcher, monitor, oxygen, and the kind of urgency that becomes efficient only after someone names the problem. A young emergency resident knelt opposite me. What happened? Sudden neurologic deficit, interscapular pain, unequal arm pressures, diminished right radial pulse. Consider type A dissection with branch vessel involvement. He looked at Rusk, then at me. Who are you? Mara Ellison. Registered nurse. Rusk's left hand closed around my sleeve. Captain Mara Ellison? The resident looked between us. I let him. I had stopped correcting people years ago when they mistook quiet work for a smaller life. Rusk's grip tightened. For 12 years I had imagined what I might say if the man who fired me ever remembered my name. I had imagined anger. I had imagined telling him that I had been right, that Sergeant Caleb Dunn had still been alive when the hospital declared him dead, and that I had not altered a record to protect myself. I had imagined asking whether he had slept well after signing away my commission. Instead, I placed my hand over his. Save your breath. The response team transferred him to the stretcher. As they moved toward the trauma elevators, the hospital's chief executive officer stepped through the crowd. Dr. Helen Voss had been director of clinical operations when I served at Wetherby. She was 58 now, with silver at her temples and the same measured walk she used when approaching a room where someone else had made a mistake. She saw me beside the stretcher. Her expression changed for less than a second. Then it became professional concern. Mara, she said. Not Captain, never Captain, what happened? I gave her the findings. She listened without interrupting, then turned to the resident. Take Colonel Rusk directly to imaging, notify cardiothoracic surgery and neurology. The exact plan I had already given. People in authority often repeat a correct instruction so history remembers it in their voice. The elevator doors opened. Rusk was almost inside when he lifted his head. What name did she say? The resident leaned closer. Mara Ellison, sir. Rusk looked past him toward Voss. The color had drained from his face, but his voice was clear. That name was in the Dunn file. No one around us understood what he meant. Helen Voss did. Her hand stopped halfway to the elevator control. The doors closed before she answered. The donor hall remained silent behind us. The quartet had lowered their bows. A server stood frozen beside a tray of untouched glasses. Above them, Colonel Rusk's name stretched across the bronze wall in letters taller than my hand. Mine had once appeared in a smaller place on a nursing roster and a casualty note. Both had disappeared before morning without explanation or appeal. On the floor near the lectern lay the two halves of Colonel Rusk's engraved name badge. I picked them up. The back was smeared with a thin line of purple ink from the pen that had broken in his pocket when he fell. Purple, the same color as the note Wetherby once claimed I had added after a dead man left my care. I held the pieces in my palm while Helen Voss watched me. Then she said very softly, "You need to leave the hospital." I looked at the closed elevator doors. 12 years ago you said the same thing. This is not about 12 years ago. No, I said. But he thinks it is. 12 years earlier, Colonel James Rusk had not looked like a man making a mistake. He looked like a man correcting one. The hearing took place in a windowless conference room on the 4th floor of Wetherby Army Medical Center. A flag stood in one corner. A clock above the door showed 10:14 in the morning. I wore my service uniform because Captain Mara Ellison was the name under review. Rusk sat at the center of the panel. Helen Voss sat to his right. She was Director of Clinical Operations, which meant she understood the route a document took after it left a bedside. She had brought a red binder. The binder contained the version of the night everyone preferred. Sergeant First Class Caleb Dunn had arrived after a training vehicle rolled during a storm exercise. He had major chest trauma, a crushed pelvis, and a head injury. The surgical team worked for 91 minutes. At 1:36 in the morning, Dr. Voss said resuscitation had ended. At 1:42 the death note was entered. At 2:15 his body was transferred toward the morgue. According to the binder, that was the end. According to me, it was not. I had accompanied Dunn during the transfer because the transport orderly was new, and the corridor elevators had been intermittently failing. Halfway to the lower level, the stretcher monitor showed a narrow electrical rhythm. The orderly told me it was artifact, then Dunn moved his left hand. Not a reflex from the stretcher turning, his fingers closed around the edge of the blanket. I checked his neck. There was a pulse, weak, slow. Present. We reversed direction. I called the trauma bay from the elevator phone and said Sergeant Dunn had signs of life. The nurse who answered told me to repeat myself. I did. When the doors opened, 2 physicians and 3 nurses were waiting. We restarted resuscitation. Dunn regained a measurable pressure. He lived for another 47 minutes. That was not enough to save him. It was enough to change the record. The original death time could not remain 1:42 if he had circulation afterward. The morgue transfer sheet could not say deceased on departure if he still had a pulse in the elevator. The decision to stop treatment would need review. I documented what I saw. At 2:28, using the purple pen I kept clipped inside my left sleeve pocket, I wrote, "Spontaneous movement observed during transport, corroded pulse present. Returned to trauma, resuscitation resumed." I signed my name. Captain Mara Ellison, Army Nurse Corps. By sunrise, that note was gone. In its place was a typed addendum stating that transport had been delayed because a nurse mistook monitor artifact for cardiac activity. My name appeared only in the incident section. The hospital said I had altered the death record after the fact to justify an unauthorized resuscitation. The purple ink became the center of the case. Voss testified that no purple entry had been present when she reviewed the chart at 2:10. That was true. I had not written it until 2:28 because Dunn had not moved until the elevator transfer. Rusk asked why I had used a personal pen instead of standard black ink. Because the black pen at the transport desk did not work, I said. Did you preserve it? No, sir. Did anyone witness you make the entry? The orderly saw me writing. The orderly had already given a statement saying he could not remember what I wrote. "Did Dr. Voss authorize you to reopen the case?" Rusk asked. "I did not reopen a case. The patient showed signs of life." Voss folded her hands. "Captain Ellison has always had difficulty accepting clinical finality." The sentence sounded professional. It meant I was emotional. It meant I was attached. It meant the record should be trusted more than the woman who had touched the pulse. Rusk turned to me. "Are you saying the entire chain of command falsified a death record?" "No, sir." "Then what are you saying?" "I am saying the chart in front of you is not the chart I wrote in." The panel went silent. Rusk glanced at Voss. She did not react. I mistook composure for innocence. The hospital produced a scanned image of the chart with no purple note. The scanned timestamp was 2:12 in the morning, 16 minutes before I wrote the entry. No one asked whether a later scan existed. No one asked who had authority to replace a page. No one asked why the morgue transfer sheet listed Dunn as received at 2:19, when the elevator camera showed the stretcher turning back toward trauma at 2:21. I did ask. That was when the hearing stopped being about a disputed note and became about my judgment. Rusk read the findings slowly. Failure to follow reporting procedure. Unauthorized alteration of a casualty record. Conduct incompatible with continued clinical command responsibility. My military nursing position ended. I was reassigned, then allowed to separate 6 months later under language that followed me into every credentialing review. Before I left the room, Rusk removed his reading glasses. "Captain Ellison," he said, "institutions cannot function if every officer substitutes personal certainty for documented fact." I stood at attention. "No, sir. I wanted to tell him institutions also cannot function when documented fact is manufactured by the people who control the scanner." I said nothing. Helen Voss closed the red binder. That sound followed me for years. Not because it ended my career, because somewhere inside it was the last version of Sergeant Dunn's life that still included 47 minutes everyone else had decided were inconvenient. The hospital did not ask me for a statement until 8:30 the next morning. By then, Colonel Rusk was in surgery. The outcome remained uncertain. The emergency department had confirmed a tear in the ascending aorta extending into the vessels supplying his brain. Dr. Helen Voss found me in a private intake room near the security office. She carried no red binder this time. "You are not credentialed here," she said. "I know, you performed an assessment and issued clinical instructions." I identified a possible dissection and told the response team what I found. "You cut open his clothing. He could not move his right arm. You should have waited for hospital personnel. He fell in front of me." Her mouth tightened. The sentence left her nowhere useful to go. A risk manager named Aaron Bell sat at the table with a laptop open. He asked for the sequence of events, the colonel's symptoms, the arm pressures, and the names of anyone who heard me warn against anticoagulants. I answered each question. Voss interrupted twice to describe my actions as informal assistance. Aaron did not use the phrase when he typed. When the statement was finished, he rotated the laptop toward me. The first line identified me as Mara Ellison RN, former Army Nurse Corps captain. Voss reached across the table. "Former rank is not relevant." Aaron looked at her. "It explains why Colonel Rusk addressed her as captain." "It creates an implication." "What implication?" She withdrew her hand. I read the statement carefully and signed it with the pen Aaron provided. Black ink. Voss watched the signature. I wondered whether she remembered the exact slope of my name in purple. Before I left, Aaron placed the 2 broken pieces of Rusk's name badge in a clear evidence pouch. The purple ink had spread across the white backing like a narrow bruise. "Personal property," Voss said. "That should go to his family." "It will," Aaron replied, "after we document the condition in which it was recovered." Her eyes moved to me. For the first time that night, I understood she was not afraid of the broken badge. She was afraid of what it had made Rusk remember. The Dunn file had not disappeared all at once. It had been revised in stages. I learned that during the 6 months between the hearing and my separation. The first change was the nursing note. My handwritten entry was removed from the paper chart and replaced by a typed addendum, stating that I had misread electrical artifact as a pulse. The addendum carried Voss's electronic approval at 3:11 in the morning. The second change was the morgue transfer sheet. The original form traveled with the stretcher on a 3-part carbon set. White for the medical record, yellow for transport. Pink for the morgue. The white copy in Dunn's chart said he was transferred at 2:15 and received at 2:19. That timeline was impossible. At 2:19, I had been inside the service elevator with him. At 2:21, a security camera showed the stretcher, returning toward the trauma floor. When I requested the yellow copy, Transportation Services said it had been destroyed under routine retention policy. 4 days after the event, routine retention was 30 days. The pink copy was listed as missing. The third change was the monitor strip. The trauma monitor had printed 17 seconds of rhythm when we reconnected Dunn after returning from the elevator. Beneath the strip, someone had written organized rhythm, pulse present in block letters. That strip appeared in the quality review inventory. It did not appear in the binder Rusk received. When I asked where it went, Voss said the inventory had included duplicate artifacts with no evidentiary value. I had no photograph of it, no copy, only the memory of the paper curling from the printer and the sound of a resident saying, "I have a pressure." Memory is strong until an institution labels it emotional. Then even the person carrying it begins to test every edge. Maybe the fingers had moved because the stretcher turned. Maybe the pulse had been my own thumb. Maybe the resident had said, "Do we have a pressure?" The doubt did not arrive naturally, it was administered. The motive surfaced 2 months later. Wetherby was preparing for renewal as a Level 1 trauma center. A documented return of spontaneous circulation after a patient had been declared dead and sent toward the morgue would require an external review. The review would examine why surgery had been stopped, whether the attending responded to changes in Dunn's condition, and whether the trauma service had prematurely ended resuscitation. Dr. Helen Voss was the executive lead for the renewal. If the Dunn timeline changed, her certification report changed with it. That alone did not prove she altered anything. It explained why every altered thing protected the same outcome. I filed an appeal. The appeal office requested the original chart from Wetherby. The hospital produced a certification that the record was complete and unchanged, except for a page replaced because of fluid contamination. Attached was a document replacement authorization signed by Voss at 3:04 in the morning. 3:04, 36 minutes after I wrote the purple note. The authorization identified the replaced page as Nursing Progress Note 7. It did not say what fluid had contaminated it. It did not identify who witnessed the replacement. It did not include the discarded page. My appeal was denied. A week later, a woman from Health Information Management called my apartment after 9 at night. Her name was Nora Feld. I knew her only as the technician who operated the overnight scanner. She sounded frightened. "Captain Ellison, I cannot discuss a patient record." "Then do not. There were 2 scans." I sat up. "What do you mean?" "The page they said was contaminated was scanned before it was replaced." "Does the scan still exist?" Silence. Then she said, "Systems do not forget as cleanly as people do." The line disconnected. When I called back, the extension went to voicemail. 2 days later, Nora Feld no longer worked at Wetherby. I wrote her name on the back of my separation orders. For 12 years, it remained the only proof I had that someone else remembered the file differently. Now Colonel Rusk had heard my name, seen purple ink, and spoken the words "Dunn file" before anesthesia could soften them. That was not justice. It was not even evidence. But for the first time in 12 years, the memory did not belong to me alone. Colonel Rusk woke 14 hours after surgery. I knew because Aaron Bell called the mobile clinic at 9:20 the next morning. "He is asking for you," he said. "I do not work at Wetherby." "He knows I am not his nurse. He knows that too." I looked through the clinic window. A volunteer was helping an elderly veteran complete an insurance form. Rain moved in thin lines across the parking lot. "Why me?" Aaron paused. He asked whether the Dunn file had a second scan. That was enough to make the room feel smaller. Wetherby required me to enter through the administrative entrance. My name had been added to a temporary visitor list. "The badge printed for me," said Mara Ellison, Community Clinic. No rank, no title beyond what the hospital could verify without risk. Aaron met me near the cardiac intensive care unit. He looked as though he had slept in his office. "Doctor." "Voss objected to this visit," he said. "Then why am I here?" "Colonel Rusk's family requested it. He is alert, competent, and still a member of the hospital board." "Does the board know why he wants me?" "No, that will not last." Inside the room, Rusk looked smaller than the man on the bronze wall. A chest tube disappeared beneath the blanket. Clear lines ran from both arms. His voice was rough from the breathing tube. His daughter sat near the window. She introduced herself as Caroline, then stepped into the hallway with Aaron. Rusk watched the door close. "We were right about the dissection," he said. "The emergency team confirmed it. You saved time." "A lot of people save time." He studied me. "You still answer like an officer." "I have not been one for 12 years. The monitor kept a steady rhythm between us." Rusk turned his head toward the bedside table. His repaired name badge lay inside a clear property bag. The purple stain remained on the backing. "When I saw that ink," he said, "I remembered a photograph." "What photograph?" "A page from the Dunn file, not the binder." "Something Voss showed me before the hearing." I remained standing. "What was on it?" "Your note." The words did not move at first. Then they seemed to enter the room all at once. "You saw the purple entry?" "Yes, at the hearing you said the file contained no such note." "I said the official record contained no such note." "That distinction ended my career." He closed his eyes. "I know." I waited. Apologies offered too early are often attempts to control the next sentence. Rusk opened his eyes again. "Voss came to my office the morning after Dunn died. She said a nurse had added language after the chart was closed. She showed me a printed image of the page, purple handwriting. Your signature, why was it not in the evidence packet? She said it was a working copy from a corrupted scan. And you accepted that? I accepted her explanation that the original page had been contaminated and replaced. You saw evidence that my note existed. I saw evidence that writing appeared on one image. You did not ask for the image. No, you did not ask who scanned it. No, you did not ask why a corrupted scan was clear enough for you to read my signature. His jaw tightened. No, the material read by 4 beats. I stopped. He breathed slowly until it settled. I signed your removal because I believed you had altered a closed record, he said. But I also believed the hospital had preserved every version relevant to the inquiry. It had not, I know that now. No, you suspect it now. He looked at me for a long moment. That is fair. A nurse entered, checked the infusion pumps, and reminded him not to exhaust himself. Rusk nodded. She left. He lowered his voice. Nora Feld. I had not heard the name spoken aloud in 12 years. What about her? She submitted a systems complaint 3 days after your hearing. My hand closed around the visitor badge. What did it say? That a scan had been removed from the visible patient index, but remained in the archive queue. She claimed the deletion request came from clinical operations. Who received the complaint? I did. The answer hurt differently than Voss's lies. Rusk had not merely failed to notice, the truth had reached his desk twice. What did you do? I forwarded it to information security. And, they said the archive queue contained temporary images without legal status. Did you speak to Nora? No. Did you tell my appeal board? No. The monitor rose again. This time he ignored it. I had a trauma center renewal, 2 congressional inquiries, and a command inspection underway. Voss told me the matter was a disgruntled employee supporting another disgruntled employee. So you buried it. I delegated it. That is the word people use when they want distance from what their authority did. He looked toward the window. Yes, the admission did not restore anything. But it did not ask me to comfort him either. Rusk reached toward the bedside table. His hand trembled before touching the property bag. I want the Dunn file reopened. You cannot order that from this bed. No, but I can request an independent audit as a board member and former commander. Voss will control the hospital's response. Not if the request names the archive queue, the deletion ticket, the scanner logs, and Nora Feld. I looked at him. You remember the complaint number? No, his fingers rested over the purple stain, but I remember where I wrote it. He nodded toward the damaged badge, inside the back cover of my black field notebook. The one my daughter brought from home. The door opened. Caroline entered carrying a worn notebook with an elastic strap. Rusk looked at her, then at me. Captain Ellison, he said, this time I am asking before someone replaces the page. The audit began with a number written in Colonel Rusk's field notebook. Incident 148827. It appeared beneath a reminder to call his daughter. Rusk had written it in black ink, then circled it once. Aaron Bell photographed the page in Rusk's room. By noon, outside counsel had issued a legal hold covering the Dunn medical record, scanner archives, transportation logs, morgue receipts, security footage, and deletion requests submitted by clinical operations during the week of Sergeant Dunn's death. Helen Voss called the audit unnecessary. She called it retaliatory. She called it an attempt by a medicated former commander to revisit a closed personnel matter. She did not call it inaccurate. The board appointed an outside forensic records firm from Baltimore. Its lead examiner was Priya Nanduri, a specialist in recovering deleted medical data. She met me in a conference room 3 days later, Rusks attended by video. Voss brought 2 attorneys. Aaron sat beside Priya. I sat alone. Priya placed no paper before us. Paper tells you what survived, she said. Systems tell you what people tried to make disappear. She projected the scan index for Caleb Dunn's chart. At 2:12 in the morning, Nursing Progress Note 7 had been scanned in black and white. At 2:31, the same page number had been scanned again in color. At 3:06, the color image had been removed from the visible chart and moved into a temporary archive queue. At 3:13, a replacement page had been uploaded. Priya continued, the 2:31 image was not destroyed. The deletion request removed the pointer visible to ordinary users. The image remained in backup storage because overnight replication had begun. She opened the recovered scan. For 12 years, I had remembered the purple note as a small thing. On the wall, it looked enormous. Purple letters seemed brighter than the projected white page. Spontaneous movement observed during transport, corroded pulse present. Return to trauma, resuscitation resumed, my signature followed beneath it. Captain Mara Ellison, Army Nurse Corps, the room became quiet. Voss spoke first. That proves the note existed. It does not prove when it was written. Priya nodded. Correct, she opened the metadata panel. The scanner had recorded the page at 2:31 and 14 seconds. The machine's clock had synchronized with the hospital network at midnight. My handwritten entry was time-marked 2:28. 3 minutes separated the writing from the scan. A handwritten time can be backdated. Priya looked at me. Did you scan the page? No. Did you have scanner access? No. Nurses placed charts in the overnight bin. Health Information Management scanned them. Priya opened an employee login record. Nora Feld had authenticated at 2:29. The scan completed 2 minutes later. At 2:58, Nora opened the color image again. At 3:02, the system recorded an export to a local printer. Rusk spoke through the monitor. That was the image Voss showed me. Voss turned toward the screen. You cannot know that. I remember the purple writing in the crease near the lower margin. Priya enlarged the scan. A diagonal crease crossed the corner. Rusk closed his eyes briefly. That is it. Voss's attorney raised one hand. A memory formed 12 years ago, following major surgery and medication, should not be treated as technical evidence. It is not, Priya said. The print log is. She displayed the destination. Executive Clinical Operations, Workstation 4, the printer in Helen Voss's office. At 3:04, Voss's account created a replacement authorization citing fluid contamination. At 3:06, her account submitted the request removing the color scan from the visible chart. At 3:11, she approved the typed addendum describing my assessment as monitor artifact. At 3:14, the replacement page entered the legal record. The sequence fit without needing anyone's memory. Voss looked at Aaron. You are allowing an outside contractor to characterize routine record correction as misconduct. Aaron answered carefully. She is describing timestamps. Priya moved to the morgue transfer record. The white copy in the chart recorded Dunn as received at 2:19. The pink copy had been listed as missing. The yellow transportation copy had supposedly been destroyed after 4 days. The paper transport copies were gone. The stretcher was not. Biomedical engineering had attached a location tag to it after repeated elevator failures. At 2:18, the tag entered the morgue corridor. 3 minutes later, it reversed direction and returned to trauma. The equipment server had preserved the route because the same elevator had been scheduled for repair that morning. Priya projected the route beside the official transfer timeline. The two records could not both be true. Voss stared at the screen. That tag may have been assigned to another stretcher. Priya opened the biomedical engineering registration log. The tag number matched Dunn's stretcher. The assignment had been recorded before midnight. Before the accident, before anyone knew the route would matter. The paper record had vanished. The stretcher's route had documented the event anyway. My hands remained flat on the table. I had imagined this moment for years. Vindication had always felt like a door opening. The truth was colder. It showed how many people had touched the same facts and decided someone else would carry the weight. Priya opened the monitor archive. 17 seconds of organized rhythm appeared across the screen. Below it, in black block letters, pulse present, systolic pressure 54. The resident who wrote it had signed his initials. The strip had been inventoried during quality review, then excluded from Rusk's binder as a duplicate artifact. Rusk looked toward Voss, who made that classification. She did not answer. Priya opened the inventory history. The classification had been entered from Voss's account. One attorney whispered to her. She shook her head. "No, I want to speak." Her voice was steady. Sergeant Dunn had injuries incompatible with survival. Resuming treatment did not change the outcome. It prolonged the process and exposed the trauma program to a misleading review. I felt the old hearing room return around me, the flag. "The clock, the red binder closing. You declared him dead," I said. "Then he had a pulse. For 47 minutes. For 47 minutes. You did not save him." "I never said I did." "Then what exactly are you claiming was stolen from you?" The question was designed to make my answer sound personal. It was personal. It was also larger than me. His last 47 minutes, I said. And the truth about who decided they did not count. No one spoke. Priya closed the monitor file. "There is one final item," she said. She opened the deletion ticket attached to Nora Feld's systems complaint. The ticket had been closed without investigation by information security. The closure note read, "Per command direction, no further action." Approver J. Rusk. On the video screen, the colonel lowered his head. Voss looked at him. For the first time since the audit began, she smiled. Not because she had been cleared, because the truth had found someone else to wound. The audit paused for 30 minutes after Priya displayed Colonel Rusk's approval. When we returned, Helen Voss had moved her chair farther from the video screen. Rusk remained visible from his hospital room. He had changed from a gown into a dark robe, but the color had not returned to his face. Outside counsel offered to continue without him. "No," he said. "The record has continued without me long enough." Voss folded her hands. "Colonel, you approved the closure. You cannot pretend this happened behind your back." "I am not pretending. You were commander, yes." "You had the complaint number, yes. You directed information security to end the inquiry." Rusk looked at the closure note. "Yes. Each answer removed one more place for him to hide." Voss turned toward me. "He fired you. I know. He reviewed the evidence." "He reviewed what you gave him, and what he refused to examine." I looked at Rusk. That part is true. Voss expected me to protect the man who had become useful to my case. I did not. His need to correct the record did not erase his decision to close it when my name was the easiest cost for him then. A person does not become innocent merely because the truth finally frightens him. Priya reopened the archive history. "The question is not whether multiple people failed," she said. "They did. The question is who altered records, who authorized removal, and who knowingly certified the final chart as complete." Voss's attorney placed a hand near her sleeve. She pulled away. "I certified a clinically accurate outcome. You certified a false timeline," Priya said. "The patient did not survive. The record stated he had no circulation after 1:42. He did, for a brief interval that did not change prognosis. Mara did not save him," her expression said. "Therefore nothing Mara documented mattered." I had heard that argument for 12 years. "If a patient will eventually die," I said, "does that give you permission to move the time backward?" Voss looked at me. "You are reducing a complex trauma decision to paperwork." "No, you reduced 47 minutes of life to paperwork because the timeline threatened your certification. The trauma center served thousands of soldiers. An external review could have suspended operations, redirected casualties, and cost lives. So you chose which truth the institution could afford. I chose continuity. You chose yourself. That landed because it was smaller than the language she had built around it." Rusk leaned closer to his camera. "Helen, did you tell me the purple note existed before the hearing?" "Yes. Did you know it had been scanned at 2:31? "I knew there was an image. Did you know Nora Feld filed a complaint?" "I knew she objected to the replacement process. Did you tell me the transport copy documented a pulse?" "No." "Did you know?" Voss hesitated. "Yes." Rusk closed his eyes. "Why?" he asked. Her answer came without decoration. "Because you would have ordered an external review." "I would have, and Wetherby would have lost level 1 status during renewal." "Possibly. You had already told the command renewal was secure." The words changed the room. Voss had not only protected her promotion. She had protected Rusk from admitting his assurance might be wrong. You believed I would prefer the altered record, he said. I believed you preferred outcomes. Rusk looked down. For years, I had wanted him to feel the weight of that hearing. Now it felt like watching a structure reveal cracks hidden beneath paint. Aaron Bell asked whether Voss had directed anyone to destroy original paper. No, did you instruct anyone to remove Mara Ellison's note? I authorized replacement of a contaminated page. Was it contaminated? Voss did not answer. Aaron repeated the question. No. Did you know the replacement would remove Captain Ellison's signed entry? Yes. Did you tell Colonel Rusk before he ruled on her case? No. Outside counsel stopped taking notes. The board chair, who had joined during the break, spoke. Dr. Voss, your access is suspended immediately. You are placed on administrative leave pending referral to the Medical Executive Committee, the Army Inspector General, and state licensing authorities. Voss stared at him. You are dismantling a career over a patient who could not be saved. No, he said, we are responding to a record you chose not to preserve. Security waited outside. Voss stood and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she stopped beside me. You think this gives back what you lost? No, then what was the point? I thought of Caleb Dunn's fingers closing around the blanket. Nobody gets to declare those 47 minutes inconvenient again. She looked at me as if I had answered in a language she refused to learn. Then she left. On the screen, Colonel Rusk remained silent. I gathered my notes. Mara, he stopped. I signed the order. Yes, I believed the institution. No, I said. You believed believing it was easier than checking. He accepted the sentence without defending himself. That was the first useful thing he had given me. The board released its preliminary finding 11 days later. Helen Voss resigned before the Medical Executive Committee could vote on termination. The Arms Inspector General opened a formal inquiry. The State Licensing Board requested the recovered scans, the replacement authorization, and every record she had certified during the trauma center renewal period. No cameras waited. Careers built quietly can end quietly too. Wetherby corrected Sergeant Caleb Dunn's medical record first. The amended timeline stated that circulation had been detected during transport at 2:20, that resuscitation resumed, and that death was pronounced at 3:07. The record identified my nursing note as contemporaneous and improperly removed. The monitor strip and the stretcher's location tag route were restored as permanent exhibits. His widow received the correction before I did. Her name was Rebecca Dunn. We had never met. She called the mobile clinic and asked whether I remembered what Caleb said after we brought him back. He never became conscious, I told her. There was a pause. Then he did not suffer alone? No, there were people with him. You were there? Yes, she breathed out slowly. For 12 years I thought they sent him away like he was already gone. I looked at the rain collecting on the clinic window. They tried, I said. He came back. She cried then, quietly enough that I almost pretended not to hear. People believe corrected records reopen grief. Sometimes they give grief a more accurate room to live in. Wetherby sent me a separate letter. It rescinded the finding of unauthorized alteration, acknowledged that material evidence had been withheld from the hearing, and requested that the Army Board for Correction of Military Records amend my separation file. The letter also offered me a consulting appointment on the hospital's Clinical Ethics Committee. I declined the appointment. I accepted the correction. Those are not the same thing. Colonel Rusk asked to meet after he left the hospital. We sat in the mobile clinic's break room because I would not meet him beneath the bronze wall carrying his name. He wore civilian clothes and moved carefully. One hand still trembled when he lifted his coffee. I submitted a statement to the correction board, he said. What did it say? That I failed to disclose Nora Feld's complaint, failed to obtain the second scan, and approved closure of an inquiry without interviewing the employee who raised it. That is accurate. I also recommended restoration of your rank and retirement credit. I completed enough service for retirement without your recommendation. His eyes lowered. I know, the old version of him might have explained policy. The man across from me let the silence remain his. What happened to Nora? I asked. Priya found her. I stopped moving. She lives in Oregon. She left Health Information Management after Wetherby placed her on a performance plan. She kept no patient documents, but she kept the certified mail receipt proving she sent the complaint to my office. Will she testify? She already has. For the first time, something inside me loosened that had nothing to do with my own name. Nora had not imagined it. The institution had made her absence easier to see than her warning. Rusk placed a small black notebook on the table. "I am retiring from the board," he said. "That is your decision. It is one consequence. It is not restitution." "No." He pushed the notebook toward me. "I thought you might want the page with the complaint number." "I did not touch it. It belongs in the audit record." He nodded and pulled it back. That mattered more than if he had insisted. "Mar," he said, "I am sorry." The sentence was clean. No explanation followed it. I looked at the man who had once read my dismissal as though accuracy lived wherever authority placed its signature. "I believe you are sorry." His shoulders lowered slightly. "That does not mean I forgive you." They rose again. "I understand." "No," I said, "you understand the sentence. The rest may take longer." He accepted that too. Before leaving, he paused at the door. "Why did you help me?" The question had been waiting since the donor hall. I could have given him a lesson about duty or honor. The truth was simpler. "You were in front of me," I said. "And you needed help." He looked down at his recovering hand. "That is all." That was enough. After he left, I returned to the treatment room. A veteran with a healing leg wound was waiting beside the ultrasound machine, purchased with the grant, announced the night Rusk collapsed. He did not know my history. He only knew the bandage hurt. I washed my hands, pulled on gloves, and sat down beside him. The record could return my rank. It could return the 47 minutes to Caleb Dunn. It could name the people who removed both, but it could not return 12 years. That was why I refused to spend another day waiting for paper to tell me I was allowed to do the work I had quietly never stopped doing. 1 year later, Wetherby removed Colonel Rusk's name from the donor hall. He had requested it himself. The board replaced the bronze lettering with a smaller plaque honoring military medical personnel whose work had gone undocumented. No individual names appeared. I learned about it from Aaron Bell, who sent me a photograph without comment. I saved the image but never visited. My correction order arrived the same week. The Army restored my rank, amended my separation record, and credited the retirement time I had earned. The envelope contained 6 pages of formal language and 1 sentence acknowledging that the original adverse action had relied on incomplete and altered evidence. I read that sentence twice. Then I placed the order in a drawer beside Nora Feld's certified mail receipt and the copy of Caleb Dunn's corrected timeline. Paper mattered. I had spent too many years pretending it did not. But paper was not the same as permission. On a cold morning in January, Rebecca Dunn came to the mobile clinic carrying a small cardboard box. Inside was Caleb's watch. The crystal was cracked from the training accident. The hands had stopped at 1:42. The Army returned it that way, she said. For years I thought that was when he died. I turned the watch carefully in my palm. It was when they first stopped trying, she nodded. I had it repaired. When she wound the crown, the second hand began moving. She asked whether I wanted to keep it. I told her no. That belongs with you. She fastened it around her wrist. The repaired watch was not evidence. It did not prove a pulse, expose an altered scan, or restore my commission. It simply carried the correct time forward. Colonel Rusk wrote once more. He did not ask for forgiveness. He said he had begun speaking to command courses about institutional deference and the danger of treating complete paperwork as complete truth. He included no invitation and no request for a reply. I wrote back with 1 sentence. Tell them to interview the person whose name disappeared. Months later, a young Army nurse visited the clinic. She had heard Rusk speak and wanted advice about a medication error her supervisor had asked her to document differently. She was frightened that reporting it would end her career. I did not promise that honesty would protect her. Sometimes it does not. I told her to preserve the original record, write only what she knew, and send copies through more than 1 accountable channel. Then I gave her Nora Feld's name, not mine. That evening, after the clinic closed, I stood beside the ultrasound unit and listened to rain strike the metal roof. 12 years earlier, Wetherby had buried my name because a correct timeline threatened powerful people. A year earlier, I had saved the man whose signature made that burial official. I did not save him because he deserved absolution. I saved him because he was alive. Caleb Dunn had been alive too. For 47 minutes, the record said otherwise. That was the difference I carried forward. Honor was never the colonel remembering my name. It was refusing to let Caleb's final 47 minutes be buried with it. If this story stayed with you, share it before another name disappears from the page by morning.